In this video, we're going to start talking about loops. Specifically, something known as a for loop. Now, a for loop is something that will complete a task a certain assigned number of times. But we're not going to jump straight into the loop. We're going to do this in an inefficient manner before we use the efficient way. And the reason we want to do that is we want to introduce some language. We want to use some terminology that we can use to describe the way that code actually works. So on my screen I've got three windows set up. I have my Visual Studio Code with my basic program, my live server, and I'm going to be printing to the console, and I also have Notepad++ running with my pseudocode set up as in we did in the first video in this series. So our goal is to print all the numbers up to and including the number 100. Now, what is the first way that we would think of doing this? Well, the simplest logical way is just to print them out. So you could go print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4, so on and so forth, right up to print 100. So this would work, this idea, and it would be a valid program. What we have here is a sequence of steps. Okay? A sequence is a number of instructions processed one after the other. So that's what a sequence is. Now we could write this in code. So we could just go console.log 1, and I'm just going to copy that a couple of times. 2, 3, so on and so forth. And if I run it, I would get 1, 2, 3. And conceivably, I could do it 100 times. I'm not going to because that's just tedious. So this is what a sequence is. It's a sequence of steps that followed one after the other. But it's not efficient. A more efficient way would be to have some type of repeated instruction, some type of what's known as iteration. So we're going to do iteration, which are instructions that are repeated. And I'm going to do this using what's known as a for loop. So in pseudocode it looks like this. For x, we'll call our variable x, or maybe we'll call it counter, equals 1 to 100. And then we'll print the value of counter, and then we will run the next loop. So what does this mean? It means for counter. So what this means, it creates a variable called counter, and it assigns, that makes that variable equal to the value of 1, and then it prints that, and then it comes back to next. So it returns to this, and it kind of says, is 1 less than 100? Yep, okay, so increase 1 to 2, because this increases by value of 1 by default. So counter will become 2. And so we'll print number 2 and come up and say, well, okay, let's make counter 3. And it'll print counter, and it will continue until it gets counter 100. It'll print counter, it'll go next. Well, we can't go to 101, and then it will continue with whatever instructions follow after. In this instance, there are none, but conceivably we could just have something like print end. Print the end. So this sequence of instructions would run. So that's what the pseudocode for this particular program we're going to write looks like. How does it look in actual code? Well, we need to create our for loop. So we go for, and then we put our normal parenthesis in. Now what do we put in the parenthesis? We have to put 3 arguments or 3 pieces of information into our parenthesis. We have to put in our starting number. So let counter equal 1, because that is what our counter is at the initial. And then we need to put in an end condition, or a condition that will exist until the loop terminates. There'll be counter is less than or equal to 100. So this is saying run this while the counter is less than or equal to 100. Now why did I say less than or equal to? So that means it's going to run when it's equal to 1, 2, 3, right up to 99, and that's less than, and then 100. So less than or equal to 100. And then I have to put in the amount that counter is going to increase by each step. So counter equals counter plus 1. And then I put in some curly braces. So I create a variable called counter, started with 1, run until it's less than or equal, while it's less than or equal to 100, and increase it by 1. And then I'm going to go console.log, and what I'm going to log is counter. And just to match the end here, I will console.log the end. And then I save and it runs, and then it ran 1 all the way to 100 and printed the end. So that's how I do a basic for loop. So we've covered some concepts in this video. The first one we covered was the idea of a sequence. Now a sequence, remember, was a set of instructions that are followed one after the other. The other idea that we have talked about today is iteration. Iteration is instructions that are repeated. And we also in the past have talked about assignment. So we've talked about 3 of the 5 basic constructs of an algorithm. An algorithm just being a set of instructions. Programmatically, what we introduced was the idea of pseudocode with a for loop and a print statement and the next. And then we did this programmatically in JavaScript with the for loop construct, the 3 pieces of information the for loop needs, and the appropriate brackets for that operation.